12%. That's how many people survive pancreatic cancer past 5 years. Not 40, not 25, 12. I need you to stop for a second because what I'm about to tell you should have been said 10 years ago. There is a kitchen habit that almost every American household repeats every single week, and medicine has known about its risks for decades without anyone getting that information to the people cooking at home. I'm Dr. Malik Jackson, 24 years in gastrointestinal oncology, and I ask myself every time I meet a new patient, would they be sitting here today if someone had told them this sooner? The compounds produced when you reheat 4 specific foods have been classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probable human carcinogens, the same category as secondhand cigarette smoke. You're being exposed to them an average of 4 to 5 times a week without knowing it, and the most shocking one on this list is not bacon, it's not fried food, it's something the health community has been telling you to eat more of for the past 20 years. I'm going to explain exactly why, and I'm going to give you specific solutions, not just warnings. Today you're going to learn which 4 foods create dangerous compounds the second time heat touches them, what those compounds actually do inside your body, and 4 practical swaps you can make this week that cost you nothing. Before we get into it, drop a comment right now. Which of these do you reheat most often? Leftover meat, cooked vegetables, fried food, or rice? I'm going to ask you again at the end, and your answer might be different. I'm Dr. Malik Jackson. Let's get into it. Quick note before we start, everything I share today is based on published research and my clinical experience. It's educational, not a substitute for your own doctor's advice, especially if you're managing a chronic condition. I want to start with a patient. His name was Robert Callahan, 54 years old, accountant from Columbus, Ohio, the kind of guy who walked 3 times a week, never smoked a day in his life, kept his weight where it needed to be. By every standard metric, Robert was doing the right things. And every single morning for 11 years, he pulled yesterday's sausage links out of the fridge and put them in the microwave for 2 minutes. He didn't think twice about it. Why would he? In August of 2019, Robert started feeling a dull ache in his lower back. He figured it was muscle tension. He'd been sitting more at work. By November, his wife insisted he get it checked. He went in for a CT scan, expecting to hear about a herniated disc. He didn't hear about a herniated disc. Robert was diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. When I sat with him a few weeks later, he asked me the question I've heard more times than I can count. Is there anything I did that caused this? I told him honestly, cancer is never just one thing. But then I asked him about his diet. When he described that morning routine every day, 2 minutes, high heat, processed sausage from the night before, I knew exactly what I needed to explain to him. Here's what most people don't know about processed meat. Hot dogs, sausages, bacon, ham, delicates, anything cured, smoked, or preserved with nitrates and nitrites. These foods already contain nitroso compounds before they ever reach your kitchen. The nitrites used as preservatives react with the proteins in meat during manufacturing. That reaction starts in the processing plant, not on your stove. So when you reheat processed meat, you are not starting from a clean slate. Let me give you an image that I think will stick. Imagine a fire pit the morning after a party. The coals are still hot underneath the ash. You can't see the combustion, but it's still happening slowly beneath the surface. When you reheat processed meat, you're not starting a new fire, you're pouring fresh oxygen onto something that was already burning. The heat accelerates nitrosamine formation. The higher the temperature and the longer the exposure, the more the reaction compounds. Microwaving processed meat on high, which is exactly what most people do, produces a significantly higher concentration of these compounds than the original food contained. A 2012 analysis published in the journal Mutation Research found that dietary nitroso compounds were independently associated with elevated pancreatic cancer risk in populations with high processed meat consumption. The IARC has classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen. That means the evidence of cancer risk is sufficient, not just probable. It's in the same classification tier as tobacco smoke. Now, I'm not telling you to never eat sausage again. That's not the point of this conversation. What I'm telling you is this: eat it once. Fresh, just cooked, right away. If you're going to reheat, use an oven at 300 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes. Even heat, never microwave processed meat on high. That 2-minute morning blast is doing the most damage. Robert made that change. He can't undo what happened. But 3 months after his diagnosis, his daughter called my office. She'd heard him talking about it. She changed her meal prep routine that same week. That phone call is why I make these videos. Let me ask you something before we move on. You've heard that processed meat is risky. You've probably seen the headlines. But did you know the risk nearly doubles the second time you heat it? That's not a headline. That's chemistry. And the next food on this list, the one that surprises almost everyone, is one that most health-conscious people eat specifically because they think it's protecting them. Stay with me. Patricia Novak is 61 years old, yoga instructor in Boulder, Colorado. If you looked at her lifestyle, you'd think she was doing everything right. No processed food, no alcohol. She batch cooked every Sunday a large pan of sautéed spinach with garlic and olive oil, portioned into containers, reheated in the microwave every single day that week. She wasn't cutting corners. She was being disciplined. In 2021, Patricia's annual colonoscopy came back with something unexpected. Her gastroenterologist found abnormal polyps, the kind that don't just appear out of nowhere. When he asked about her diet, she told him about the spinach. She was proud of it. He wasn't alarmed by the spinach itself. He was alarmed by what she was doing to it before she ate it. Here's what happens to spinach and kale, celery, beet greens, chard when you cook it and let it sit. Fresh spinach contains naturally occurring nitrates. In their original form, those nitrates are completely benign. They actually support healthy blood pressure and cardiovascular function. The research on fresh spinach is genuinely good. Eat it raw, eat it often. I'm not here to change that. But cooked spinach is a different situation entirely. The moment you apply heat to spinach and then let it cool, bacterial activity and enzymatic reactions inside the vegetable begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. This conversion doesn't stop in the refrigerator. It slows down, but it keeps going. The longer cooked spinach sits, even in cold storage, the more nitrite it accumulates. Then you reheat it, and here's where it gets specific. The heat drives two reactions at the same time. First, it accelerates more nitrate to nitrite conversion. Second, it drives a reaction between those accumulated nitrites and the amino acids naturally present in the spinach-producing nitrosamines. The same class of compounds we just talked about with processed meat, except this time, you made them yourself. From a vegetable you bought specifically because it was healthy? Think about that for a second. Patricia cut out processed food specifically because she was afraid of cancer. She added spinach to every meal specifically because she wanted to protect herself. She was doing everything the health community told her to do. And the habit that was quietly working against her was the spinach, not because spinach is bad, but because she heated it twice. The thing she trusted most was the thing that needed to change. That's not her fault. That's a gap in the information she was given. And it's exactly why I'm here. A study published in the peer-reviewed journal Food specifically warned against storing boiled spinach for more than 12 hours, even refrigerated, due to this direct nitrate to nitrosamine conversion pathway. And here's a number that stopped me cold when I first read it. Celery, the vegetable most commonly added to soups, stews, and stir-fries that get reheated all week, contains up to 3,400 milligrams of nitrate per kilogram of fresh weight. That is among the highest of any common vegetable. Every time that soup gets reheated on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the conversion keeps running. The fix is straightforward. Cook spinach and leafy greens in portions you'll eat immediately. If you have leftover cooked spinach, eat it cold the next day in a salad, mixed into something cool, whatever works. Cold does not drive the nitrosamine forming reaction. Heat does. That's the entire rule. If you meal prep and you're not willing to give that up, I get it. I prep too, then prep the ingredients raw and cook portions as you need them. That one change eliminates the risk entirely. Patricia restructured her meal prep. She still eats spinach every day, she just doesn't reheat it anymore. Quick pause before we go to food 3. If you know someone who reheats their leftover sausage every single morning and thinks they're being smart about it, send them this video. That one share might be the most useful thing you do for their health this week. 2 more foods. And the next one is the one people think they already understand. They're half right. This next one I'm going to approach differently. Instead of a single patient, I want to tell you about a pattern I noticed across a community. Several years ago, researchers studying cancer rates in Southeast Asian immigrant communities in Houston noticed something that didn't fit the expected profile. Women in these communities, many of whom cooked at home daily, didn't smoke, maintained healthy weights, were developing lung cancer and gastrointestinal cancers at rates that couldn't be explained by standard risk factors. The variable that kept appearing in the data was this: kitchen ventilation and repeated heating of cooking oil. These were home kitchens where oil was reused multiple times a week. The smoke produced during reheating was chemically similar, in some measurements, to secondhand cigarette smoke. The women weren't doing anything they thought was dangerous. They were cooking at home. Here's what's happening at the chemistry level, and I'm going to give you an image that I think will make this stick. Take a piece of paper and fold it once. You can unfold it, it's a little creased, but it holds its structure. Fold it again at the same crease. Deeper damage. The third time, the fourth time, eventually the paper tears at exactly that point. That's what happens to polyunsaturated cooking oil, sunflower, corn, soybean, canola every time you apply heat. The first heating starts a process called lipid peroxidation. The chemical structure of the oil begins to break down. The products of that breakdown include compounds called aldehydes, specifically acrolein, and 4-hydroxynonenal, along with polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. When starchy foods are present, you also get acrylamide. These are not benign byproducts. They are genotoxic, meaning they cause direct structural damage to DNA. The IARC classifies acrylamide as a probable human carcinogen, group 2A, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons include several compounds classified as group 1, sufficient evidence of carcinogenicity in humans. A 2019 study published in Food Chemistry found that the concentration of toxic aldehydes in reheated sunflower oil increased by over 200% compared to the same oil heated for the first time at the same temperature. Let me say that again. Over 200%. Same oil, same temperature, just heated a second time. Now here's the part that catches people off guard. When you take fried food, fries, fried chicken, anything cooked in oil, and you reheat it in a microwave, the surface temperature becomes uneven. Some areas of the food reach scorching temperatures while others barely warm through. The scorched areas produce the highest concentrations of all three classes of compounds. And the scorching happens at a microscopic level. You don't always see visible browning. You can't smell it, but it's happening. Let me ask you something. How many times have you put last night's fries in the microwave and thought, yeah, this is probably not great, and done it anyway? I've had that exact conversation with patients in my office. The answer is almost always more times than I can count. And I'm not here to make you feel bad about it. I'm here to tell you why it matters and what to do instead. 3 rules for this one, and they're simple. Never reuse frying oil. One use, then discard. I know oil isn't cheap, but this is the one area where the cost of the habit exceeds the cost of the oil by a significant margin. If you eat fried food, eat it immediately after it's cooked. The degradation doesn't stop when the oil cools, it just slows. And if you absolutely must reheat something fried, use an oven at 325 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes. Even heat distribution prevents the scorching that produces the highest compound concentrations. Never microwave fried food on high. One more thing. If you cook with vegetable oil regularly, consider switching to avocado oil or refined coconut oil for high heat cooking. Higher smoke points mean slower degradation during that first heating cycle. Now, the 4th food. This one is different from the first 3, and I want to be upfront about that. The risk here isn't primarily about carcinogenic compounds forming during reheating. It's about something biological that happens inside the food while it's sitting before you ever turn the heat back on. And the reason it matters long-term is the same reason all 4 of these foods matter: repeated, cumulative exposure over months and years. James Okafor is 47 years old, high school teacher in Atlanta. He batch cooked 10 cups of rice every Sunday. Smart, efficient, practical. He'd let it cool on the stovetop for a few hours before putting it in the fridge. Then he'd reheat portions throughout the week. Over the course of 1 year, James experienced food poisoning 3 separate times. Each time, his doctor treated the symptoms. Nobody looked for the pattern. The fourth time, James tracked it himself. Every episode came within hours of a meal that included his batch-cooked rice. When he came to me not for the food poisoning, but for unrelated GI issues that were getting worse, and I asked about his cooking habits, the rice storage immediately stood out. Here's what most people don't know about cooked rice. When rice is cooked, a bacterium called Bacillus cereus, whose spores survive the boiling process completely intact, sits dormant in the cooked grain. The spores are heat-resistant. Boiling doesn't kill them. When cooked rice cools and sits at room temperature, those spores activate and the bacteria begin multiplying. The USDA defines the danger zone as 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature range in which bacteria double approximately every 20 minutes. Cooked rice left at room temperature for just 2 hours can reach bacterial concentrations sufficient to cause illness. Now here's the part that surprises almost everyone. Bacillus cereus produces two types of toxins. One causes vomiting, the other causes diarrhea, and it is produced during the storage phase. Not during reheating, not after you eat it. During storage, when you reheat that rice, you kill the bacteria. But the toxins they already produced are heat stable. They survive full microwave reheating. They survive stovetop reheating. The bacteria are gone. The toxins remain in the food. So you heat the rice, it looks fine, it smells fine, it tastes fine, and you've just consumed a toxin that your body has no way to identify or neutralize before it begins doing its work. In the short term, nausea, cramping, diarrhea. Unpleasant, but survivable. In the long term, and this is the connection most people never hear, repeated low-level exposure to bacterial toxins from improperly stored rice contributes to chronic intestinal inflammation. And chronic intestinal inflammation is one of the most replicated risk pathways in gastrointestinal cancer research. Not a hypothesis. Documented across multiple longitudinal studies, James didn't have food poisoning the week I saw him. But his GI inflammation markers were elevated in ways consistent with repeated low-level bacterial toxin exposure. We caught it, we addressed it. He changed his protocol. 3 steps. That's all this takes. After cooking, get rice into shallow containers within 1 hour. The shallow surface area allows heat to dissipate faster. It moves through the danger zone temperature range quickly instead of sitting in it. Refrigerate and use within 24 hours. Not 3 days, not while it still looks okay, 24 hours. Then reheat once to steaming hot throughout, not just warm in the center. And never reheat rice a second time. The simplest version of all of this, cook smaller batches. The time you save on Sunday is not worth the cumulative toxin load you're building up over years of weekly exposure. Now I want to give you a number that I think will reframe this entire conversation. The average American household reheats food 4 to 6 times per week. If even 2 of those reheating events involve one of the 4 foods we've discussed, and based on the dietary patterns I see in my patient population, that's a conservative estimate that's over 100 chemical exposure events per year. Per person. In your own kitchen, no single event causes cancer. That's not how it works. But cancer is not a single event either. It is the result of accumulated cellular damage over time, damaged DNA that doesn't get repaired, inflammatory signals that don't get resolved, cells that replicate abnormally and aren't caught by the body's normal defenses. 100 exposures per year, 10 years, 1,000 compound exposures from a single habit that takes 30 seconds to change. That's the math, and that's why I kept talking about this with patients until I finally decided to say it publicly. If you're managing a chronic condition, diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, a history of polyps or GI cancer, please bring this conversation to your doctor. These mechanisms interact with underlying conditions in ways that are specific to your situation, and your physician needs to be part of that conversation. Let me bring this back to where we started. Robert Callahan asked me if there was anything he did that caused his cancer. I told him the truth, that cancer is never just one thing, and that what happened to him is not his fault. He didn't know. Nobody told him. That conversation is part of why I'm here talking to you right now. The 4 foods we covered today: processed meat that already contains carcinogenic precursors before you apply a second heat, leafy greens that convert their natural nitrates into harmful compounds during storage and reheating, cooking oils that accumulate genotoxic breakdown products with every additional heating cycle, and rice that harbors heat-resistant bacterial toxins when stored improperly. These are documented mechanisms with documented risks. But here's what I want you to walk away with. This is not about fear. This is not about rewriting your entire life. You do not need to overhaul your diet. You need 4 specific habit changes. That's it. Never reheat processed meat at high temperature oven at 300, or eat it fresh and once. Eat cooked leafy greens cold the next day instead of reheating them. Discard used cooking oil after one use and never microwave fried food. Cool rice quickly, refrigerate within 1 hour, use within 24 hours, reheat once only to steaming hot. 4 changes. That's the entire ask. Robert's daughter called my office 3 months after his diagnosis. She'd changed her meal prep routine that same week she heard her father's story. She didn't need a research paper to motivate her. She needed the information. That's all any of us ever need. I'll leave you with something I've said to patients for years, and I mean it every single time. Your kitchen should be the safest room in your house. Make sure it is. If today changed how you think about even one thing you do in your kitchen this week, tell me about it in the comments. I read them. And if you know someone who reheats their leftover sausage every single morning without thinking twice, send them this video. Not because they need to be scared, because they deserve to know what you just learned. That one share might be the most useful thing you do for their health this week. Next time, we're going to talk about 5 breakfast foods that have been marketed as heart-healthy for decades and what the most recent research actually says about them, particularly for anyone over 50. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. The information in this video is based on published research and my clinical experience. It is for general educational purposes only and does not constitute personalized medical advice. Individual risk factors vary. If you have concerns about cancer risk, chronic GI conditions, or your dietary habits, please consult your own physician. Case studies use composite details to protect patient privacy.